There's so many great stories involved with this house, not just because it's our first attempt at a passive house, but because it was a repeat client who's the head of the Global Ecology Center and a Nobel Prize winner. Because we didn't just design a new house, we designed a new house by recycling an old house. And it was a house that was never meant to be a full-time house. It was a summer cabin in a group of summer cabins, and it was the only one left. Okay, so what is a passive house? Briefly, and I totally cribbed this from the Passive House US site, but it was the best way to summarize it. The 7 main points is to super insulate, eliminate thermal bridging as a way of controlling heat and cooling traveling through the walls, making the building envelope as airtight as possible, air sealing, using energy and heat recovery ventilation as opposed to, for example, traditional forced air system. High performance windows and doors, taking advantage of passive solar strategies, and then the Passive House Institute, in order for it to be certified as a passive house, it has to comply with their energy model. Briefly, for those of you who don't know, it's a building strategy that came out of Europe, Germany, I think, and it's been popular in Europe for decades in mostly residential, but also some non-residential buildings. If it's done right, in the middle of the winter, you can heat your house essentially with just turning your hairdryer on, or having a dinner party, just getting a bunch of bodies in the room. The heat from half a dozen people or a couple of appliances is enough to keep you comfortable. So this is what we started with. It was an old little cabin in the woods. The first time Scott and I saw it, it looked like a little old lady and maybe lived in it for 50 years, and it was with no kids or no dogs. I mean, the inside of it was in fantastic shape, and it had these beautiful, almost barn-like great room and a couple of sleeping porches that had been converted into rooms over the years, and then one bedroom and a tiny little galley kitchen. So the material in here and the character of it was definitely worth saving. So the living room, or the great room as we called it, and the master bedroom, as a team, we decided to save that and design a new house around it. No shear, no insulation. It really was built like a barn or a little cabin. So the interior boards were basically, the interior finish kind of was substituting for sheathing on the house. So there's an existing plan when they bought the house. The big great room, these were originally sleeping porches, and then they got turned into rooms at some point with real windows and closets. And then one bedroom back here, and a little kitchen, and a little bathroom, and a furnace. There was no place to put it, so the furnace was in the hallway. Pretty small, very simple. So we saved this big box, the great room, and the old sleeping porches, and we saved the master bedroom, and we essentially designed a house around it. They have 2 grown kids, so they're empty nesters, but they've got bedrooms for when they graduate and there's no jobs for them. They get to come back here. And a big kitchen, and you'll see later it was a little challenging because of all the trees around the property to take advantage of natural light, but we did our best. Saved everything. All the framing lumber, all the finished lumber, it was all redwood. It was all tight grain, old growth. The boards themselves were 10-inch boards, which are really hard to find, as you know these days. So we stockpiled everything, dismantled the parts of the house we weren't keeping, and then so what you're seeing in that photo is the back side of the interior finish, because the studs are on the inside. They're all exposed. And then we jacked it up on steel skids and moved it out of the way. Then put in a real foundation, a big matte foundation, given how close they are to the San Andreas. Then we moved them back again on top of the foundation, and then filled in the rest of the new house sort of in between it with the floor framing and all the wall framing. So to insulate these old boxes, we essentially built a new roof over them, and at least on the great room, it was a big enough span that we had a piece of steel that was providing a new ridge beam. And this project had a ton of rain delays. Unfortunately, it started late enough in the year, and as we all know, we had a very wet winter, so it really got held up. All said and done, probably lost 2 to 3 months of schedule because of rain on this project, just where it was at when all the rain started. So when it finally dried out and the sheathing could go on, this is something that probably would have made a difference if we were in Scandinavia. I don't think it was really necessary for this project, but it's a good shot of kind of the true belt and suspenders approach for one of the air sealing techniques, where they put down the sealant bead on the exterior face of the framing before the sheathing went on. And that's one thing to do. The more important thing to do is the taping and the sealing of any possible avenue that air can leak out or leak in to the building. So that included, all the seams and the sheathing, any penetration. You want to keep penetrations down to a minimum because you're just going to have to seal it up again. So how are we doing? Well, it's not done yet. So remember these here. Those are the 7 kind of commandments you want to design a passive house around, or more importantly, build it around. So the super insulating, in the crawl space we used Icynene, and we even oversprayed below the bottoms of the framing a bit to get more in there, and I think we netted out about R36 in the crawl space. Unfortunately didn't have any good photos of the walls or the roofs with the insulation, but we used blown in cellulose, and the walls are R26, I believe, is what we ended up with. And then the roof, we had about 15 inches to work with. So in theory, that should be about an R50 roof. The walls and the roof were blown in cellulose, and again, the crawl space was spray foam, an Icynene product. A little bit about thermal bridges and framing. They kind of missed the boat on what we wanted to do with the framing, and they framed it in a conventional manner, and which I'll call dumb framing. And then the smart framing, which because of it, we got photos that demonstrate the difference between the two. So Scott went out there and gave them the 2-hour lesson in smart framing after they had framed up at least this part of the house. And so we figured out all the framing that could come out, and there's a pile of it. And I'm not even sure if that's the total pile after they're doing. But basically, there's a lot of redundant framing that ends up in a traditionally framed house. And with some extra strength in hangers and fasteners in certain intersections and connections, you can do with a lot less framing lumber than you would normally see in a house. So you're not only saving material, but you're also, every stud in that wall is a potential thermal bridge. There's the taping, all the penetrations. You try to keep them to a minimum, and then where you have them, you've got to seal them really tight, whether it's on the wall or on the roof. And then once it's all taped up, we did the blower test, and you're gonna have Scott check that too. But basically, you seal the whole house up, and you test it for leaks. And there are various tricks to find out where the leaks are, and then go around and identify where those leaks are and plug them up before you start any of the exterior finishes on there.
How did it do?
Did pretty well.
Well, it's the Passivhaus standard is 0.6 air changes per hour.
Yeah.
When it's pressurized, which is about 10 times tighter than a typical new house. So it's super tight, and we worked really hard to get to meet that standard. It hasn't done its final test yet.
Yeah, this was the dry run, so to speak. You want to do it before you start the exterior finishes, because then it just gets exponentially. It's a lot harder to plug the leaks on the outside than the inside. A little bit about the heat recovery system. The unit we're using is from Germany, and it's everybody calls it the magic box. And it's basically is a fan inside there that moves the air, and then the heat will still come from a heat pump unit. And so you can see these little plastic ducts that also came with the HRV system. It all comes from Germany, and I'm told it's really easy stuff to work with. You can cut it practically with a steak knife, and they come with these fasteners, so it's very easy to install. We used Sirius windows, triple glazed windows on this project. There was some trepidation about how they would look aesthetically, and they actually look great. Again, the client did the solar eye calculation and photo here, and as you can see, this is a lot with a lot of big redwood trees around it. So even in the summer solstice, which is coming up, we're probably only getting sun on that roof for about half the day, maybe even less than half the day. And that's even on parts of the house. So opportunities for a PV array, which they've expressed a desire to do in the future, will be challenging, I think, what part of the property to fit that. Here's the new kitchen with a lot of south and west facing glass. Be a very nice sunny room, so definitely taking advantage of passive solar strategy in there. The old redwood room with a new skylight in the dark corner to hopefully bring some balanced light in there. And then briefly, the Graham Irwin, which some of you know, I think, did the modeling for us, or for the clients. And I just chose the kind of baseline sheet from his PowerPoint that shows some of the benchmarks we're shooting for. And there's that air leakage maximum, what Scott mentioned, and that's kind of one of the more important parts of this whole thing of complying. They are almost closed in. The exterior doors come next week, and then I don't know if they're going to do their final blower test at that point or wait till longer, but the house has a ways to go before they're finished. But just wanted to show this. So there's the great room with the fireplace, and then after it was taken out. Now that's the kitchen beyond there, but it'll have a door, so you'll see through to the back. That's what it looked like before we started, when it was stripped, and the framing starting, and they've got the porch on and the roofing, and now the siding is starting on. They've started from the back. So that's it.